Looping through data in our system is a very common task inside of PHP and is done using a few different keywords. In PHP, there are several loops. So we have for each, which is a way we can cycle through arrays or data stores. We also have a while loop, the standard for loop, which allows you a little bit more control, and then the do while loops or statements. Meet me over in workspaces again, and let's dig into these looping constructs. So let's take a look at looping constructs in code. The first one we're going to look at is called a for loop. For loop is a very complex loop because it's able to do so much and have so much modified within it. So let's take a look at the structure of the for loop and how we can use it. Let's go down to our area in the bottom here, and we will run a for loop. We start with a keyword for, okay, and then open and close some parentheses, and then open up curly braces, and then go down a line and close them. So this is the normal format of most of the functions that run code based off of a condition. So the inside of a for loop here will have three different expressions. So the first expression is going to be evaluated the first time, every time, no matter what. So that can be our base. So we're going to call this a counter. Okay, so we're going to set counter equal to 0. Close that expression with a semicolon. I'm going to put a space in here for clarity. And then the second expression is going to be a test expression. So we're going to run this loop as long as the test expression or the second expression is equal to true. So as long as it's true, we're going to run our loop. So in this case, we want to say if counter is less than, and then give it a max value. So we'll just say 10. All right, so we're going to start at 0, and we're going to run this loop as long as the counter is less than the value 10. Now, the next thing we need to do, which is our third or final expression here, that is evaluated at the end of each time the loop runs. So what we can use that for is to increment our counter. So we'll simply state counter, and then we'll use our auto increment operator, which is ++. So the way that this is going to work is it's going to hit counter equal to 0 the first time it executes line 53. So every time it hits line 3, it's going to see counter equal to 0 and set counter to 0. Then it's going to evaluate, is counter less than 10? As long as the counter is less than 10, then we're going to run whatever code we put on line 54. Then it's going to loop back up to line 53, increment the counter, and then test the second expression again. To see this in execution, or to see this actually run, we'll just print something. We'll echo something to the screen. So what we'll do is create a list tag here in PHP. So we'll say echo, and then do our string, and then create some HTML, which is our list. And then we will use our string concatenator, and then add counter into the mix. So we want to print out whatever counter's value is. Then we're going to add another string here, and close our list tag. All right, close that with a semicolon. And so now each time it runs through, it's going to print a list item. Let's go ahead and surround this with a list. We'll get rid of our pre here, get rid of pre here, and then we'll surround this with a unordered list tag. So UL, then we'll go down after our PHP and add in our UL close tag. All right, let's save this and see what it looks like when we run our code. So as you can see here, it's gone through and looped and printed 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way down to 9. Well, let's look at this. Is that how we want it to work? Well, we've set it equal to 0, and as long as it's less than 10, which 9 is less than 10, then it will increment the counter after it prints out the list. So the first time it runs through, it'll print a 0. The final time it runs through would be 9, because once it comes back around after it's incremented to 10, counter is no longer less than 10. If we wanted to make it print the 10, we would simply say less than or equal to 10. So we'll save that, Go back over and refresh. So now it prints our 10. Let's say we wanted to run that loop, but we wanted to start with the integer 1. We just simply change our counter to 1 and then refresh. So anytime we have numerical counts that we want to loop through, so a certain number of times, then we would do that by using a for loop. Well, let's say we want to modify our badge count. Well, we're going to leave counter equal to 1, or actually we'll set it to 0. We'll say you start with no badges. Then we're going to use the counter and we're going to test it to make sure that the counter doesn't go above a certain number. So let's go up here and change our max badges to, let's say, 20, because we don't really want to run this loop 150,000 times. Scroll down, and then we're going to test against our constant, which is max badges. Hit save on that, and then each time we go through, we're going to increment our counter. So we're going to print out our counter, and this should run a total of 20 times, or actually 19 times. We don't want to go over 20. So we'll go here, switch back over, and preview. So now we're running 0 all the way to 20. So that's how you can use it in a real-world example. You can loop through something a certain number of times by defining a constant or a variable that you can test against in the second argument of our for loop.